Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Here's an update on our potential tropical cyclone, or what I like to say, future Isaias. Let's get to the latest. Not a whole lot of change. There are some fascinating things with this system that I've been monitoring today. It's still elongated. The hurricane hunters have flown out there now 3 separate times and have not found a closed low-level circulation. They are finding winds of close to 45 miles per hour on the northern side, but as you look at this satellite loop here, the circulation looks to be somewhere in this vicinity. So it's somewhere in here by this tight cluster of thunderstorms. The banding features are starting to kind of coalesce right there. Great outflow, which is these cirrus clouds streaming north and some streaming to the south. But you also notice it's elongated. It hasn't tightened up. And it's been moving more west than north. Now, its technical movement is west-northwest, but that's pretty important because it looks like it's going to stay south of Puerto Rico as it continues west. Now, the next question is, does it stay south of Hispaniola? So let's go to the latest forecast track. Here it is, just came out at 11 a.m. That's why I was waiting here. I'm going to go into the future here. It does keep the track, at least the Hurricane Center forecast, south of Puerto Rico, but plows it right into the Dominican Republic. Now, this would happen tomorrow morning. Now, I tend to believe that I would err on the south side of this cone. Remember, when you see these tracks, it's not the middle of the track. It's anywhere within the cone. The middle is just kind of the average. So anywhere in that track. But I would suspect that this side would be favored. And that could be important long range. We'll see if it's a big deal or not. But one thing to tell you about Hispaniola, which is the island of Haiti and Dominican Republic, huge mountains there, tends to rip storms to shred. That's why you see it at 60 miles per hour. Then it exits the island and it's down to 45 if it's lucky. Now, if it moves over Cuba as well, this would further weaken the storm. So the track here is really key. Just a little shift to the south or north could make a big difference in intensity. And then long range, there is this trend we've seen for several runs, and I actually am starting to think more and more the west side of Florida, eastern Gulf of Mexico, looking like a more likely scenario. Notice the time frame, 8 a.m. So I know a lot of folks say, I'm going to the beach this week or this weekend. No issues in the Carolinas. This isn't going to happen until next week. It is expected to slow down as it moves that direction as well. So let me show you some of the wind probabilities with this. So let's look at the probabilities of seeing tropical storm force winds, which are, 39 miles per hour, but we'll say 40. We'll round it up here. So we'll go into the future. You can see pretty good chance we'll see tropical storm force winds on the north side. That's where they tend to be extending farther out. So that's why Puerto Rico, even though the center will pass to your south, you will see tropical storm conditions as tropical storm warnings up for your island. And then it moves into the Bahamas and the Florida area by Monday. And notice how the chances of tropical storm force winds fall off. This is more a function of the possibility the storm could weaken to a tropical depression or fall apart completely. Those are pretty low probabilities. And you see the highest ones are in the eastern Gulf and really nothing up into the Carolinas. That's pretty important because that's a sign that the guidance in the Hurricane Center at least thinks long range that this might not last that long. And there is a good chance that can happen. So let's show you the spaghetti, but I will caution you with the spaghetti where the storm initializes. And if you ever hear that term initialize, where does the model put the center when it runs the model, which is a simulation of the storm into the future? Well, big problem with the guidance. All of them have been initializing up to the north, some to the south. They're coming a little bit better, but I will say that the guidance has been trending too far north compared to where the storm actually is. So you see the tight clustering right over the Dominican Republic, and then we start to see a pretty significant spread over Florida. But one thing that you can pick up, we had this saying, I said this last night on the air. Remember, models are not forecasts. Please remember this. A model is not a forecast. It is a guidance. I know a lot of people call them computer forecasts, but this is essentially one computer model trying to give us guidance to build a forecast. They are tools to build a forecast. So we have a saying that all models are wrong because not one of these models is going to be 100% right, but some models are useful. And in this case, the thing I take from this is the spread is always a sign of uncertainty in the steering currents, but there is a cluster right here. Notice the cluster there. There's a pretty big spread here, but a cluster there. So you're seeing the Hurricane Center focusing on that, and that is something to keep an eye on. There's definitely a left or southwest trend to the guidance, and I think that's something to pay attention to in the long range, because the steering currents right now are all being driven by this ridge of high pressure to the north, which is pretty strong. And today, thank goodness, NOAA is going to send out a Gulfstream aircraft, which is going to fly up in this area. And it's an upper air mission. It's not going to fly into the storm. This is an upper air mission at 30,000 feet, where typically we would see commercial air traffic. They are going to take upper air readings of the atmosphere up here. This will tell us how strong or weak and the position of this high pressure. This thing is like a gear wheel. It's like a cog. So the storm currently, because the ridge has been so strong, and it's actually been building west with the storm, it's trending it back in this direction. Now, if this should stall out or weaken or just sit there, that's going to leave this weakness right here in between the next ridge and this trough, which is over the Great Lakes. You can see it up there. It's actually low pressure. That would allow for some northward movement. But where that happens is really important. So today we'll learn a lot from that upper air mission. And the reason the upper air mission is even more important, remember, there's a lot of travel bans and far fewer commercial flights. There would be a ton of flights from the United States down to the Caribbean, South America, some to Europe, that would be crisscrossing this region. And commercial aircraft would be taking these readings for us, upper air data. Now, there's not a ton of them over the ocean, but there certainly would be more than there is now. Air travel's down like 60, 70, 80% in some cases. So that lack of data there is kind of important to the models. And I think that upper air flight today will be really important. So long range, that high is going to be really important, how strong it stays. So I'm going to go into the future based on the GFS, and you can see that the ridge breaks down a little bit. At least it shows it hinting. And that's why the GFS of all the guidance is showing more of a Florida east side. The European model is showing more of this. So we're trending towards the European model just because of reality of what is actually happening with the guidance. So still not a lot of great certainty today. It's chugging along at 25 miles per hour. If it starts slowing down, that'll be key as well. But we'll see that this afternoon, once that hurricane upper air mission goes out there and the next hurricane hunter, I think at some point today, especially with this clustering, let me go in close, of thunderstorms right in here, I think we're going to see the low level circulation kind of show itself. It's also going to be getting close to some of the terminal Doppler radars coming out of Puerto Rico, which should give us a little better idea as well. So not a lot of change with the future of Isaias, but for the Carolinas, still not a great concern for us at this point, basically because of the potential that it could weaken as it moves over the Dominican Republic. And just if you've never been to the Dominican Republic or Hispaniola, these are giant mountains in here. So huge, huge, huge mountains here. I'm going to turn the terrain on. I think the terrain is, there we go. These are huge mountains that this has got to cross over. And this is, we jokingly sometimes call this the graveyard of tropical systems because typically this is where tropical storms go to die. When they get into this area, these big mountains tend to rip it apart. So there's a lot of questions about how far this gets up here. So that's all I have for today. It's not a lot different than what we had the last couple days. I'll be keeping an eye on. Of course, I'll have updates coming up at 4, 5, and 6 on NBC Charlotte, WCNC. We will definitely have an updated track coming up at 5 o'clock, and I think that will be the first time. If we're going to see an upgrade to a tropical storm, it would happen at 5 o'clock this afternoon.